So the collective consciousness is a macro representation of all 8 billion individuals on the planet, including their shadows, which become the collective shadow. When the mass consciousness is in the lower end of the scale, like it has been for all of history, the ruling class, so-called elite, agents of the collective shadow, are dominating the victim mentality population, like we have seen all of history. This game has been going on for a long time. This tyranny, victim/abuse dynamic has played out in many different forms, both covertly and overtly, and it's still playing out overtly today in many places like the Middle East and China and whatnot. But in the West, until recent times, it has played out mostly covertly. But because of the internet and whatnot, it has been revealed more and more in recent years as the mass consciousness has been steadily increasing to higher levels, which weakens the shadow and brings more light and transparency and awareness into the mass consciousness and brings everything negative up on to the table, so to speak, and for everything to be processed out like has been happening and is now happening more intensely than in the time we are moving into now is going to happen even more. So many souls are attracted to and chooses a life in service of the collective shadow. That's the negative path down the scale. And they typically find a position in the negative ruling class hierarchy as they incarnate in that with that mission. And you can play that role in one life and be part of the opposition or rebellion in the next. And so the merry-go-round karmic carousel goes. Many higher level souls have volunteered to help raise the level of mass consciousness to get Earth out of this stagnant victim abuse cycle, which has always ended in a global cataclysm, which resets everything, and we start all over again like it happened with Atlantis. And these are the so-called lightworkers dedicated to getting up the scale quickly and thereby help raising the level of mass consciousness to drastic new levels, which has happened since 2012 when we breached the all-important 330 level, which is a little bit more positive or integrated than negative. And since 2012 we have rapidly reached the higher 400s, which we have remained since 2020. So that's been sort of a stagnated situation since then, and it's still in the higher 400s now, and we are waiting for a breakthrough into the 500 levels at some point. A large bulk of humanity is what is known as undecided people, according to the law of one, the raw material. He calls them undecided. And these are the typical NPCs or non-playing characters. They have not yet consciously chosen a path either towards higher consciousness levels, which means you become more and more clear, a channel of your higher mind or your full soul self, or you can choose to become a servant of the collective shadow. And the vast majority, the bulk of humanity is undecided at this point, but the sides are being chosen as more and more catalyst is being introduced in the form of all the chaos we see. And some choose the negative path, some choose the positive, and many people are still on the fence, and many people are still will remain NPCs and will not be able to choose in this graduation or this harvest, as we are going into the harvest now in the coming decades or whatever. The collective shadow and its servants always try to use the manifestation power of the NPCs to their advantage via repetitive media propaganda campaigns. People who mindlessly repeat the current thing like a mantra, such as "trust the science, Orange Man bad, I stand with Ukraine," are easy to recognize as NPCs. You can see this all over the place. I mean, these people are completely brainwashed, and they have very little individuality and a mind of their own. They have no distance to the mind. They just repeat whatever pops into their heads, and it's all controlled or influenced to a large degree by the collective shadow, and they don't see it themselves because they have never reflected on anything. They haven't chosen to polarize either positive or negative, because they have no distance to their mind. They can't, just basically just going along to get along. They have no individuality almost, except for a thin layer of personality on top of being controlled by the collective. So you can imagine all individuals as a circle with an arrow inside. And then you can do the same for each group, company, organization, and country on the planet. And all of these arrows, they point in different directions, but they always have an equal and opposite arrow pointing in the opposite direction of the same force and size, because everything basically adds up to zero if you view it from a bird's eye perspective and see the whole planet from above. You will see all these factions all warring against each other and all opposing each other, because that's how it's been and that's how it is on a negative planet. You get a mass consciousness with a massive collective shadow who organizes and makes sure that you have as much conflict as possible, because the collective shadow is feeding off of that all the negative energies being generated by these conflicts, both in each individual and also when each individual goes up against another individual in different conflicts, and different groups against different groups, and countries against different countries. You see this throughout all of history. So basically you have all these arrows, which is insistence on a certain perspective or a certain viewpoint, and the stronger the arrow, the more insistent there is, and the bigger the bubble of this arrow, the more powerful the group is. So you have all these things adding up to basically zero, a sum-zero game, so to speak. It all adds up to zero, because all these arrows, they cancel each other out, but they're all opposing each other, because everything is split up and compartmentalized in a negative energy planet. You have all these compartments. Instead of being and recognizing that you have one, humanity is one being with different cells in the same body, so to speak. You don't recognize that. You basically have all the cells are fighting internally against each other. And that's what we have been seeing. So the planet is basically optimized, or has been optimized for generating as much negative energy as possible, like a farm for the collective shadow, with endless conflicts on all levels. And the higher you raise your level of consciousness, the more your arrow starts to fade as you become less insistent and more soft and flexible inside. So in a high level planet, which we are moving into, all the bubbles with these arrows, they start to gel instead of generating friction against each other, because you mellow out that insistence, that strong arrow gets mellowed out and faded away. So then you have these bubbles that start to gel instead of creating friction and negativity, which is the paradigm of cooperation instead of competition, facilitating the golden age we are moving into. As of now, our collective consciousness is caught in the bottleneck of the higher 400s, where I myself was caught for a while on my journey. I talk about this in previous videos. A 1000 level teacher hammered me into the 500s, and I believe that the first contact scenario that Bashar talks about, with UFOs stationed openly around the world within 2029, will be enough, hopefully, to hammer our collective consciousness into the 500 levels and beyond, finally, because we have been stagnated for so long now in the 400s, and we can't really take off until we get into the 500s and even the higher 500s, because that's when the collective shadow will be really weakened, and we can continue to completely accelerate in a completely different direction and compared to what we have been going sideways, so to speak, for many years now. But it's starting to happen at this point, as we see with the developments in the world. But until that breakthrough, you can expect all sorts of darkness to be exposed and come up into the collective, while the collective shadow and its agents are desperately trying to manifest World War III via the Ukraine situation. Luckily, the dark agents have lost a grip in the US, while they still maintain a firm grip in Europe. This is likely to change as Europe is too weak without a loyal US to back them up, and they know it. As always, the best you can do is work to get up the scale, and you can check my ebook via the link below to learn how to do that as quickly and efficiently as possible.